he was an architect. I almost said an architect of genius. He could have, he dedicated a good number of years in his later life to painting in the solitude of his remarkable private residence, which he built for himself. But if he had a chance to build more, probably many more people would have known of him. Anyway, he lived a long life as opposed to the previous artists that we presented today. Konstantin Melnikov, born in 1890 and died in 1974. We remember Lenin was born in 1870. So he was 20 years younger than Lenin, Konstantin Melnikov. So he was a Russian architect and painter. His architectural work compressed into a single decade. So he only for 10 years actually built, placed Melnikov on the front end of the 1920s avant-garde architecture. Although associated with the constructivists, Melnikov was an independent artist. Did I read correctly? Artist? Yes, because the architect is an artist too. And those who think that the architect is not an artist are betraying their own soul. Not bound by the rules of a particular style or artistic group. In 1930s, Melnikov refused to conform with the rising Stalinist architecture, withdrew from practice and worked as a portraitist and teacher until the end of his life. It's sad, but he endured. So Konstantin Melnikov was born and died in Moscow. He was the fourth child of the family. His father, Stefan Ilarionovich Melnikov, originally from that region, was a road maintenance foreman. So he came from very modest upbringing, background, employed by the Moscow Agricultural Academy. His mother came from the peasants of that district. The whole family occupied a single room of a state-managed working-class barrack in Hay Lodge, then a quiet northern suburb of Moscow. So they lived all in one room, just like the parents of Joseph Brodsky, the youngest poet who ever received the Nobel Prize. Joseph Brodsky also lived in one single room with his family, with his parents in St. Petersburg. And he writes about it very movingly in his beautiful book called Less Than One. Melnikov tried hard to rise above bitter poverty, to return to farming, and eventually relocated to their own small house and set their own dairy farm. Konstantin Melnikov later praised his father, who noticed the little boy's addiction to drawing and regularly brought him scrap paper for drawing from the academy. However, all the education they could afford was a 2-year parish school, which he completed in 1903. It moves me, this biography, because it shows again that if you have a passion for something, you can do art, you can do beautiful things, you can accomplish yourself, but you need tenacity and you need passion, even if you have unfavorable circumstances. So Konstantin met his golden day in life through a milk delivery woman who happened to serve the family of Vladimir Chaplin, a wealthy engineer. She recommended, so a milk delivery woman recommended Konstantin's drawings to Chaplin, who was so impressed that he hired the teenager to his firm and paid for his art studies. Chaplin, this is not Charlie Chaplin, it's Vladimir Chaplin, an engineer, a wealthy engineer at the time, overestimated Melnikov's basic education, and Konstantin failed his grammar test at the Moscow School of Painting, Sculpture, and Architecture in 1904. 1 year later, he passed the admissions that selected a class of 11 out of 270 applicants. Melnikov studied at the school for 12 years, first completing general education in 1910, then graduating in arts 1914 and in architecture in 1917. Despite Chaplin's calls to concentrate on architecture, Melnikov leaned towards painting. By the time he joined the architecture classes, he already was a well-recognized portrait painter. Here he was, a truly remarkable man and an excellent architect. Here he was a little bit later in life, you know, beginning to dress like a gentleman. He was beginning to build. Here he is in his later years when he was an older man, and he does seem like a wise man. He was a force in architecture, and he still is, and you'll understand why. Anyway, here is the same biography that I already read, but with different words. Here is a photograph in his own house, and we are going to see it, a remarkable, one of the most remarkable private houses ever built in modernity. Some drawings by Melnikov, Konstantin Melnikov. You can see here the ethos of the revolution, the quest for modernity. Here we see touches of expressionism. You know, there is a tension in these sketches, maybe not so apparent in the previous works that we saw of the other artists and architects. URSS, searching for a building, and he did build. But please remember, he actually was active. I mean, he built because he continued to do competitions and so on, but only for 10 years, only 10 years in a long life. He died at 80 something. Only in 10 years he was, you know, building. And this is sad because this was an exceptional architect. But it happened to live in that very difficult period of time when Soviet Union was ruled by Stalin and so on. From 1923, so at that time Lenin was still in power, for the All-Russian Agricultural and Handicraft Industries exhibition. It was destroyed, but I discovered some pictures. It's a pavilion from 1923. Here it is. It's still a modest building, but not so modest, and with already some creative parts. Look at all these people gathered around it, you know. I like to imagine what they felt, you know, building this building with a very low budget, obviously, and it's not a palace and it's not a masterpiece, but it's the creation of a young architect who wanted to bring the new in. Here is another view of the same building. And I think the spirit of architecture is present. Doesn't matter, you know, the so-called nobility of the materials or the, you know, the incredible perfection of execution and so on. Now, the spirit of architecture is still present. Here is a model of this pavilion from 1923 by Konstantin Melnikov, another view of this pavilion, but we are going to see some very interesting buildings that he built. Now this, it's a market. It was destroyed again from 1924, 1925. Actually, I don't know if it was destroyed. It is described in this way on Wikipedia, but I think the building still stands, unless it was destroyed very recently. Because these pictures, you see the car here. This is not an old car. I mean, I'm not a great connoisseur of cars, but this seems like an almost contemporary car, and the building is still standing. This is not one of his masterpieces, but we'll arrive at that. Office for New, this another market in 1924, 1925, no pictures. A competition entry for the USSR pavilion of the Exposition Internationale des Arts Décoratifs Industriels Modernes, destroyed. And the bus garage, this exists from 1926, 1927. It was refurbished, it was cleaned up, it exists. Anyway, it's a bus. What is it? A bus garage. It's a garage. It's not perhaps highly. It doesn't appear. Although I hope I have a plan here. You'll see that it's a vast building and it's not so uninteresting as it might appear. Look at the plan of the building, and you know, the red things there are, I guess, the spots allocated in space for the buses. It's a big building and it still exists. Konstantin Melnikov, a bus garage. You see there an old bus entering, making it into the building with some difficulties, I would say. Maybe now it's a museum there of some sort, you know, for buses or old vehicles. It looks like it. But you see it's structurally is still rather audacious. Now the Soviet pavilion, this is a formidable work. The Soviet pavilion at the Paris Exposition Internationale in 1925. It's a resolutely modern building. It has tension, it has drama, it has clean lines. It has everything that a modern building, a good modern building is supposed to have. And it's a famous building that is presented in most histories of modern architecture. So it's from 1925 by Konstantin Melnikov. Let's recall Villa Savoie by Le Corbusier was built in 1928. So this was proposed and built in 1925. We'll see also a project he did for Paris, also for a garage. Very interesting and very engaging and very provocative. Unfortunately, it was not built. But this one was built. Too bad it does not exist any longer. But this is the destiny of so many buildings, remarkable buildings built for you know, world's fairs. It's sad that they are destroyed. This was a very good building by Konstantin Melnikov. The man who found his luck because a milk delivery woman recommended him to a wealthy engineer. Isn't it beautiful and moving, actually? You know, he built here the pavilion for Soviet Union in Paris, but he arrived at studying architecture thanks to the, you know, generosity and intuition, even vision of a milk delivery woman who recommended him and so on when he was 12 or whatever. Beautiful. You know, it's, you know, so when I think about this and I think of all the spoiled kids who complain that they cannot do this and they cannot do that, while in fact they have everything, there is no excuse. You can do great work if you have a fire within, and if you don't have that fire within, forget it. Doesn't matter if you have the latest model of laptop or I don't know what, you still won't be able to do it. You need a fire within. And sometimes the luck of meeting, you know, an inspiring milk delivery lady. It's a great work, this one by Kazimir Malevich. Sorry, not Kazimir Malevich, Kazimir Melnikov. Here is the model and the plan. I hope I have here the plan. Maybe I already showed it. I'm probably beginning to be a little bit tired and I apologize. But if you look at the plan with the resolute diagonal, you'll see some resemblances to some plans of Rem Koolhaas. There are some resemblances, this preference for the diagonal. You see here the diagonal, this diagonal, and which is quite strong and emphatic in the project because it divides the, you know, the rectangularity of the plan otherwise into two triangular, you know, spaces. Now, a factory club from I don't know what year in Moscow, but no pictures. The Svoboda Factory Club, another factory club. This one exists, and it was taken care of because Melnikov is indeed an important presence in the cultural Russian or Soviet pantheon. So another building by Konstantin Melnikov. And you see the drama that the diagonal element or entity brings to a building. You know, if these two stairs were not like this, you know, the building would have been more static. But they create a disjunction that is beneficial to the sculpturalness of the building. I'm sure this thing didn't belong to his project, but what can we do? This belongs to the present with red rug and all this banality, but we have to make abstraction. Here it's absent, but instead there are the cars. Now another club, this one also important and present in the histories of architecture. Also from around that time, you know, the 20s, he only had 10 years at his disposal to build, you know, and it was Lenin's idea and the government of Lenin to promote, you know, workers' clubs. And they built several, and Melnikov, as you can see, did so too. It's a good building. It is. And it is courageous. And you cannot have a good building without courage. No, you can't. It's the conception is very clear. You know, of course, now these days we have spectacular cantilevers and so on. But look, 100 years earlier, almost, we employ them too. Konstantin Melnikov. What is this? An embankment, another kind of building. I don't know what it is, but this one, it is refurbished, but doesn't seem so interesting. Another factory club, but it remained a project. He did also competitions. He didn't win. But you will see his private residence, which is truly remarkable. This one, the Melnikov's own residence on that street in Moscow, is I don't know if that is real or someone played with Photoshop or whatever with SOS, but in a way, yes, it's a dangerous building because it brought in you know, a type of private house that was unique. Look at this, like two cylinders, you know, interconnected, and also the shape of the windows. We'll see pictures of the interior. Look at this building compared to all the buildings around. This stands out. And Melnikov, you know, the architect who, as a kid, was held by the luck encounter with a milk delivery lady, was able to build it. Now here, yes, with the furniture is not avant-garde, but you know, you have to understand this architect, after ending his productive years building architecture, dedicated a good number of years, maybe 40 years, to teaching art and teaching painting, and he painted. He was a painter, but he built a building. The studio in which he built, and is this studio inferior to, let's say, the art studio of aux Enfants that Le Corbusier built in Paris? for his painter friend and colleague, no, I wouldn't say so. This building is not inferior at all. I might even be tempted to say the opposite. It's a very interesting building, and it doesn't matter how you look at it from the air or from the sides or on what floor, or you study the plans. It's an innovative building through and through. Yeah, he is the painter in his older age. Uh, I wonder what he felt, deprived of, although we understood that from the very beginning, he seemed to be more attracted towards painting than towards architecture, but he proved himself significantly in architecture. These are the plans of his private house, his own house. Uh, anyway, yeah, a few more images with his building, and I could understand in a way, the building was so different from all the other buildings that yeah, some people accuse him as being a bourgeois intellectual, an artist, and they probably didn't understand him. They couldn't understand how a house could look like this. Now, a construction of a theater. I hope I have images. I don't. Sorry. Another garage. Um, what can I say? Too many garages. But what can you do? The artist, the architect is sometimes condemned to, do whatever works he's asked to do. Maybe Ledoux would have liked this project. It's quite a garage. I mean, it seems the Russians at that time had a liking for big buses or whatever, because these are not buildings, for just a few vehicles. It's a whole citadel actually dedicated to another garage. God, this one a little bit different. Um, and you'll see another one, an interesting one. Anyway, you look at the elevation and you wonder what kind of a function this is. You don't know what's going on there. It's decorative in a way. It's some kind of an artwork. The facade itself. I don't know. Is the entrance into the garage here somehow? It's possible, but maybe this diagonal here represents the ramp. It's also possible. I don't know if I have other images. Another another garage. This one is rather dramatic because of this. He liked the circle. We saw it in the plans of his house. We see it here in the expression of this garage. I don't know exactly what is happening, but I'm sure he was too good of an architect to just throw this round giant window there without some kind of a reason. But it's still interesting, a garage, but it makes you stop if you pass by. Konstantin Melnikov. We'll see a very interesting project done for Paris, also for a garage. Now, competition entries. We are approaching the end of this presentation. A design for Lenin's sarcophagus. He didn't win the competition. Unfortunately, it's difficult for me to understand what's going on here. I mean, I kind of see the sarcophagus, but it looks like a more ample project. Now the competition entry for the Moscow bureau of the newspaper Leningrad Pravda. Leningrad, also the name Leningrad comes from Lenin, of course. And look at this, it's some connections or resemblance a little bit of other works done at that time in this new country, if we are to call it so. That we refer to the Tribune by Elisitsky, or even some elements of the international of the Tatlis Tower. And this is done by Vladimir Melnikov. Now, competition entry for the monument of Christopher Columbus in Santo Domingo, 1929. Look at this, it's a work which even today, by today's standards, would rather stand out. It is a little bit emphatic, but maybe that's what monuments are supposed to look like, to be emphatic. Anyway, it was not built, but imagined by Konstantin Melnikov. Now the competition entry for the Paris of the Soviets, which was not awarded to him, but to the other architects, so never got built. Le Corbusier also submitted a project for this competition, and he didn't win either. This is what, sorry, the resolution of the drawings is not great, or of the picture, but you still get an idea a little bit. So-called visionary work, rather, emphatic, rhetorical. The competition entry for this place in Moscow, never built. Yeah, he was not lucky with these competitions. His beloved circle. Now, 2 parking garages in Paris, and I'm happy I arrived here. We are really at the end of the presentation. I think a very interesting and engaging and provocative work. Look at this, it's a parking garage, above one of the bridges above the Seine in Paris. Look at these columns that support the ends of the building. Some kind of an attempt to connect with the history and culture of Paris, but also to bring the novelty of his vision. And it would have been indeed, here we see the plans, the functional plans, the diagrammatic plans of what he intended to do. So there are two proposals he made. They are so abstract that they are almost difficult to read unless you study the project more carefully. This was a sophisticated architect, quite able to handle the descriptive geometry and to, create unique spatial configurations. If you look at this drawing, you would say, wait a minute, where is the garage? But it is the garage, and even has figurative elements like, these columns like this, quite, in a way, quite Russian, through the, dramatic posturing. But even graphically, the works are very interesting. And here is a model. Imagine this was built in Paris. It would have been the talk of the town. It would have been one of the most innovative structures in Paris, even by today's standards. Everybody would have known this is Melnikov's garage or parking. It was not built. Let's hope maybe future president of France would have a liking for this project and build it. I think it would be an interesting addition to Paris and not at all obsolete. You see, this is an architecture vision. The function is prosaic, it is a garage. But the architecture he arrived at is not prosaic at all. And it's probably very functional. I'm far from being very knowledgeable about garages, but I imagine all these diagonals actually represent rather truthfully what is going on inside the structures. And being Paris, he introduces figurative elements that connect with a certain aspect of the French culture, visual culture, as it is manifested in Paris. That's it.